I'm Alan Robin, and I'm sitting here with my partner, Mr. Earle Doud.
Good evening.
And also with Mr. Westbrook Van Voorhees, Mr. John St. Ledger, and Mr. John Cameron Swayze. And the five of us are going to conduct a series of simulated press conferences. We've taken the actual recorded voices of the president and other prominent political people, and we put their answers with questions entirely of our own making.
Well, why did we ever do a thing like that?
Well, I don't know, but I think it sounds much more interesting this way. General, it's a pleasure having you here today, and we'd like to get right to the questions.
Well, I don't know of anyone could do the job better than you people here.
Mr. President, after having spent 35 years in public service, what impressed you most upon your return to private life?
I could say this only. It's an expensive business.
Now, let's continue with Mr. Van Voorhees.
Sir, may I ask you some frank, straight-from-the-shoulder questions?
Well, now, there's been free discussion in every meeting that I've ever held.
Then would you give me your frank appraisal of Mr. Nixon's chances in 1968?
No.
Mr. Swayze.
General, perhaps you'd rather talk about Mr. Goldwater.
Well, you're getting into a question that we've been studying a long time.
Now, in the last election, Senator Goldwater lost.
Did he ever?
There's always been a question as to how many votes Senator Goldwater received. How many people actually voted for the senator?
I guess there was, 70?
What would you think of Barry Goldwater running again in 1968?
Oh, no.
General, since we're discussing personalities with you, we're aware that there's been a coolness between you and Mr. Truman through the years. During what period did Mr. Truman nettle you most?
From 1945 until this minute.
Incidentally, General, are you aware that Mr. Truman is coming to town Sunday night?
I'm leaving early Monday.
Mr. St. Ledger.
Mr. President, I'd like to turn for a moment to another area. Do you think voting legislation should be handled on a local level or on a national level?
Is that, that is, well, it's difficult. Now, let me make one thing clear. I think that, so far as I know, I say this, I think it is a private matter for the local authorities, or I mean the local, local matter for local authorities, and that's all that's in there. I have flatly stated again and again, get that by all means, and get no more. Now that is all I can say in detail on that matter.
Sir, I think you'd agree that the job of President of the United States has become probably the most demanding and responsible job in the world.
I don't mind telling you.
Looking back now on your momentous 8 years in office, can you think of anyone else who might have handled the job as well as you did?
Anybody.
Mr. President, it has been a pleasure having you with us today.
Well, I know it has. Well, I believe it has, put it that way.
Well, just as a point of information, you've conducted many high-level news conferences in your time. Who would you say has asked you the most ridiculous, absurd questions that you can recall?
People like yourselves.
One final question. If you were president and World War III were to begin, what would you do?
I would certainly not publicize it.
Gentlemen, who are we scheduled to interview next?
I've been waiting around now for 3 weeks.
next guest is the junior senator from New York. Senator, first we'd like to welcome you here today. We hope this will be a happy interview.
No, well, I mean, I don't think that would be, I doubt if it will be.
Senator, as the father of 9 children and a devoted family man, we'd like to thank you for taking the time out to come and speak with us here.
I'm delighted to see so many grown-ups all in one room.
We continue the questioning with Mr. Swayze.
Senator, I wonder if we might switch for just a moment and...
Keep the door open.
Well, sir, we normally close the door for silence, you understand.
I'm in favor of keeping that door open.
All right, we'll keep the door open.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Van Voorhees.
Senator, as an out-of-stater, some people have questioned your motives for coming into New York.
I grew up here in the state of New York.
Well then, obviously it does have meaning for you. What exactly is New York to you and your wife Ethel?
Something that we will hand over to our children.
Mr. St. Ledger.
Now that you're a senator, you must have some very, very exciting and vital things you plan on doing for the people of New York.
No, I have no plans.
Well, surely, Senator, you have some ideas.
I just have no plans.
Well, what do the people of New York need?
But I think you'd have to ask them.
Senator, if we can look ahead for just a moment, do you think your brother Teddy will one day be president?
If he wants to join me and where I'm going, I'd be glad to have him along.
Well, then, if I correctly interpret what you've just said, when would you like to be president?
Now,
Well, I think you know it can't be done that quickly.
1965, 1966.
No, obviously you can't run for president until 1968.
I don't think that's fair.
It's been rumored that you're carrying on a feud with the president. Now, of course, none of us happen to believe that. Didn't you pay him a visit just recently?
A few days ago.
Did you have a nice, friendly chat with the president?
I showed up and he had guards to keep me out.
We understood, sir, that on a recent tour of the western United States, you visited Mount Rushmore.
I did, yes.
With the great heads of Washington, Jefferson, and Lincoln carved into the mountainside.
That's correct.
And as you stood there gazing up at that monument, did any particular thoughts come to mind?
I'd like to be a part of that.
Senator, many thanks for being with us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Incidentally, due to your heavy schedule, we almost took it upon ourselves to cancel this interview entirely.
I would have been delighted.
Our next guest is the President of the United States. Mr. President, we are honored for this opportunity to visit with you in the midst of your normally busy day in the White House.
I am hopeful that the visit will be helpful.
First, may we extend our congratulations, although it was months ago, on your thundering election victory to the presidency.
This will be for a new 7-year term.
We'll go right on with the questioning now to Mr. Swayze.
Mr. President, as a continuing example of your policies, who in the years to come will be guarding our eastern coast against Russian submarines?
35 Cuban fishermen.
Mr. Van Voorhees.
Mr. President, Mr. President, we understand that you are contemplating some changes in the income tax law for next year.
That's what we propose to do.
And if your changes go through, sir, how much of our net salary will we be able to keep?
1/10 of 1%.
And where will we be mailing our income tax checks?
The President, the White House.
Mr. St. Ledger.
Sir, vice presidents are becoming more and more important.
And I think they should.
Would you say that Hubert Humphrey has been a good vice president?
Yesterday was quite encouraging.
Sir, your middle name is known the world over. Could you tell us what Mr. Humphrey's middle name is?
Prudence.
Mr. President, election campaigns are costly. Has the Democratic Party allocated any funds for the next election?
$40 billion.
And how much of that will be for your reelection as president?
$42 million.
And how much for Mr. Humphrey?
$1,600,000.
And how much to reelect Bobby Kennedy?
$38.
Mr. President, according to Newsweek, an internal problem of considerable magnitude is the mounting divorce rate. What is the government's policy toward the alarming increase in Mexican divorces?
We congratulate the winners. We can go on to the lead.
Sir, being the president, your health is of major interest to everybody. As an example, when you had a simple head cold and were confined in the hospital for a few days, it made headlines around the world.
That's what normally happens when situations like that develop.
Just as a point of curiosity, sir, who treated your head cold while you were in the hospital?
Dr. Howard West, Dr. Paul Sanger, Dr. Edward Dempsey, Dr. Hugh Hussey, Dr. Earle Doud, Dr. Charles Nell, Dr. Lee Clark, Dr. Ian Papper, Dr. Samuel Bellett,
Sir, I wonder if we could turn for just a minute to your War on Poverty program, which we would
Dr.
like...
John Myers, Dr. Marion Fay, Dr. Helen Tosick, Dr. Jane Wright,
Well, many thanks for being with us tonight, sir.
Dr. Frank Horsfall, Dr. Joe Willis Hurst, Dr. Marion Fay, Dr. Edward Dempsey, Dr. Sidney Farmer.
As the First Lady of the land, we realize your time is limited, and therefore we're grateful for the opportunity to take this tour of the White House with you.
It's a great pleasure to have all of you here today.
We thank you. Is there any particular place where you'd like us to start?
I thought you all might begin your tour here.
The White House is an enormous building. How large a staff do you have to do the housework here? I mean, who actually keeps this place clean for you?
The wives of senators, congressmen, and legislators from Washington.
Oh, is this the president's office?
Talk in whispers and tiptoe.
Dr. Joe Willis Hurst,
Now, where are we now, madam? I think I recognize this. This, I believe, is the Blue Room.
No,
Well, I'm sorry.
that's all right.
I can't help but notice how many rare and valuable works of art are actually here in this one room.
It's been a wonderful addition. A silver coffee urn that belonged to the first president to inhabit this house, John Adams.
Is that this piece right here? I'm sorry. Was that the coffee urn?
No,
Thank goodness. I was afraid it might have been. What was it?
that wonderful and enormously valuable bust.
Sorry.
That's all right.
This is a lovely hallway.
I think it is one of the most beautiful in the White House.
This is an interesting bedroom. Is this the bedroom where you and the president sleep?
Yes, war was declared twice in this room.
One thing I've noticed, the walls are covered with fine paintings, but why do all these great masterpieces have mustaches penciled onto them?
Could you say no to the president?
This is one of the newer rooms in the White House, isn't it?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
No one knows your husband as you do, madam. How would you best describe him?
The brainiest, most devoted, most hardworking.
Well, that's a very good description of your husband.
Yes, I can hear him saying it right now.
Are those your dogs out there?
The beagles out there under the trees.
Yeah, they're wonderful dogs. They must give you a great deal of pleasure. You know, one looks as though she might be about ready to have pups. Is that possible?
I could tell you, but that's just a real personal question.
You used to have quite a complement of dogs here when you first moved into the White House, isn't that so?
There used to be 20 or more. Now there are only about 4.
Well, I understand that they were Great Danes, and you got rid of them because they weren't housebroken.
Yes, the children used to walk on stilts up and down the hall.
This room that we're coming into now is, I believe, the James Madison guest room?
Theodore Roosevelt.
Theodore Roosevelt guest room, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I understand this is the reading room where your husband comes to relax after a busy day downstairs in his office.
I think the answer is yes.
We know your husband to be a very well-dressed man. Would you tell us what he wears when he's just lounging around the White House?
No.
We seem to be back at the main entrance. We'd like to thank you for being so patient with us.
I must say I loved it.
One final question. I can't help but look around this house and feel the aura of history.
The history does not stop.
Exactly. And knowing that you are a great student of this nation's history, I wonder if you'd recall for us the actual words which the Indians spoke as they greeted Columbus on his arrival at our shores.
Welcome to the LBJ Ranch.
Our next guest is the Governor of New York. Governor, it might interest you to know that you are our first interview today.
I can't imagine a more auspicious start.
You are governor of the most complex and powerful state in the Union. Could you tell us what are the duties of the governor of the state of New York?
I haven't the slightest idea.
Well, in that connection, sir, just how often do you actually go to your office?
Annually.
We continue with Mr. St. Ledger.
One of the biggest problems facing you in New York is the plight of the New Haven Railroad.
I read a lot about it in the papers.
Well, what exactly is the problem? Give me an example. If a train arrived in Grand Central from, say, Westport, Connecticut at 4 this afternoon, when would it have left Westport?
11 years ago.
Mr. Van Voorhis.
Can I ask you a rather tough question about taxes?
Go all the way.
Your opponents say that if you are re-elected, the small businessman will be taxed out of existence.
There's no question.
Swayze?
Governor, how do you like Bobby Kennedy being in your state?
I'm really deeply grateful.
Are you telling the truth?
No.
You are known to be very generous to those close to you.
Over the years.
Well, could you tell us what you're planning to give your wife for her next birthday?
The state of Connecticut and the state of New York.
Did I understand you correctly? You're going to give your wife...
Both states and the people in those two states.
Governor, we'd like to thank you for being with us, and good night.
Goody night.
Oh, and a goody night to you, too.
Our next guest was the last Republican vice president. He ran for the presidency in 1960 and looks to be a leading contender for 1968.
Hi.
You have been publicly feuding with Governor Rockefeller.
Of course.
Would it be correct to say that you believe he has a big mouth?
Not as wide, I would say, as would appear at some times in the American press.
Let's go now to Mr. St. Ledger.
Continuing with Governor Rockefeller, should he be chosen to run for president in 1968, when will you start campaigning for him?
Within 48 hours after his defeat.
Mr. Van Voorhis.
Sir, if we may make the observation, you seem to be interested in elections of all varieties. Would you care to speculate on who you think will win the Miss Rheingold contest next year?
Senator Goldwater has a substantial lead at this point.
Mr. Swayze.
When you were vice president, you were on speaking terms with many international leaders. Now, is your relationship with them still today as it's been in the past?
Just what it's been in the past.
Then have you heard from Mr. Khrushchev lately?
I talked to him this morning on the telephone.
Really? Where was he calling from?
He had called me from Arizona.
If Khrushchev suddenly defected from Russia to the United States, what would you advise we do?
Where you have a man who is vigorous, who is articulate, who has been effective, and who is honest, and who's done a good job, you send him back.
The Immigration Department announces that Miss Christine Keeler and Miss Mandy Rice Davies have each applied for entrance into the United States.
Of course, they haven't been submitted to us on an official basis.
Well, I understand that. What I'd like to know is this. Do you think Keeler and Davies should be admitted into this country?
Well, I think it would be very bad for the country for us to go on a big spending spree at this time.
Sir, may we reminisce about your days in Washington?
Of course.
I was wondering, is it true that the men's room attendant at the Capitol building used to get only $25 a week salary?
He also has, of course, the opportunity to talk to the President, to the Secretary of State, to our various ministers.
Sir, you spend a lot of time traveling, of course. I believe you just recently returned from England.
Very recently.
And according to the British press, on your recent tour of England, Sir Anthony Eden is quoted as having described you as a perfect ass. Have you any comment?
But that's typical British understatement.
I'd like to thank you for allowing us this opportunity to speak with you today. You've been most cooperative. Is there anything of yours that we could keep as a memento of this visit?
Take California.
For our final question, I should like to ask one of a personal nature that deals with your political image.
I understand.
It has been said by your critics, and I mean that incidentally to exclude us, but it has been said that you sometimes speak and act impulsively, without thinking.
But I do think.
Again, we didn't say that, sir, and many thanks for being with us.
But I do think.
There's no question in our minds. It was only hearsay at best. Thank you very much.
I would just add this one point.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm afraid that's all the time we have right now.
But I do think.
Senator, it is our pleasure to speak with you here tonight. As Republican Minority Leader in the Senate, your views on affairs of state and on the political scene are always in demand. Senator, what's new?
Well, if I gave you a direct answer, it would be almost a prejudgment of an issue on which testimony is still to be taken.
Senator, your political flamboyance is such that when coupled with your flowery oratory, there are those among the opposing party who say that you are actually nothing but a buffoon.
I do not disagree.
Senator, I wonder if we can get some insight on your colorful career.
Well, I know of no reason why we shouldn't.
Well then, why did you decide to become a United States Senator?
Because that was my first job after I got out of high school.
Mr. Van Voorhees.
Now, Senator, not to bring up a sore point, but you did nominate Mr. Goldwater in Chicago, did you not?
So to speak.
Senator, are you denying it?
I think so.
Well, regardless, what do you think Mr. Goldwater and Mr. Miller should do during the coming years?
I think they can very usefully get a lot of indoctrination by going to any party county headquarters, stuffing envelopes, getting to see people, develop a poise as they see candidates and others come in, run errands and so forth, familiarize themselves with party organization and machinery. And then it becomes part of their nature, and it makes for adeptness in the political field.
Mr. Swayze.
Senator, do you think the Republican Party will stage a comeback in 1968?
I know of no reason why it should.
Well, in your own mind, do you see a candidate emerging for 1968?
No, I don't.
Well, then where do you think the Republican candidate will come from in 1968?
Out of the woodwork.
Senator, how are the Democrats reacting to the news that Mr. Goldwater may step down as head of the Republican Party?
They resent it. They resent it bitterly.
We continue the questioning now with Mr. St. Ledger.
Senator, there's a move afoot to curtail the filibuster.
I think I can say this.
Excuse me, are my eyes deceiving me, or is that a naked girl sitting up there in the Senate balcony?
I think one can say reasonably that this has occupied the attention of the Senate since the 9th of January.
Looking back, Senator, over your career, has there been one outstanding statement that you've made to your colleagues in your many years in the Senate?
There has been.
May I ask what it was?
Little Tom Thumb pulled out a plum, as you know.
We noticed that you were conspicuous by your absence at the Washington Senators' opening game this year, an event which normally attracts the political leaders of both parties. Why was that?
First, I had not been invited. Secondly, there was no hint that I would be invited.
We understand.
Third, I was not invited by anybody.
We're a little short of time, sir.
Fourth, I would not go if I was invited.
No, we understand.
There were 2 reasons why I wouldn't go.
It wasn't an important question, sir.
My Senate duties here are taxing enough as it is, and they are continuous. I would not like to see the implication go out.
We have been talking with the Senate Minority Leader. We're sure he has enjoyed it as much as we have.
I don't think so.
Senator, it is our pleasure to speak with you here tonight. Welcome to our microphones.
It's always good to be with you.
Now that you've lost your race for the presidency and are no longer the Republican senator from Arizona, what are you going to spend the next few years doing?
Destroying Republicans.
And may we ask, what did you spend the last few years doing?
Destroying Republicans.
We'll continue the questioning with Mr. Van Voorhees.
Well, Senator, we understand there remains in the Republican campaign fund $1.5 million. Now, that's quite a bit of money. What do you and Congressman Miller intend doing with it?
We're going to keep it.
Mr. Swayze.
Now that the thunder and the tumult of the campaign have subsided, could you tell us briefly about your theory of conservatism?
It just doesn't work.
Mr. St. Ledger.
You're noted for being quite a family man. On the bleak morning after your defeat, was your family the great comfort to you that we would be led to believe?
I've never in my life seen such inflammatory language.
Senator, you took a beating at the polls that few people have taken. What effect, if any, did it have upon you personally?
Frankly, it made me a little bit sick.
Senator, would you mind if we talk politics?
I'm speaking as an amateur.
Is there any chance, as has been reported, that you will never run for the presidency again?
I would certainly think it would be to the advantage of the United States and all the free world.
Sir, a question of a personal nature. Why are you sitting here inside this cave wearing this loincloth and whittling these bows and arrows?
This is the only way that we can get control of the government.
Sir, time is growing short. Would you like to make one more point?
I'd have to give you one off the top of my head.
We'd like to thank you for being here with us this evening. I think in summing up, one final question. Why did you actually want to be president?
You've got to eat and I've got to eat.
Thank you very much.